Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our website and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. Finally, if you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. We're also live every Friday-ish or Thursday, so if you subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine, you'll make sure to get a notification whenever we do go live. All right, Jesse, you're right. It is time for some learning. Anna, how you doing this week?
Good. And Jesse, we apologize for the late start. We had an issue with some tech.
Tech issue, mouse-related. A single mouse can bring us down, Jeff.
Oh, yeah. It's always the little things. Blocking and tackling, David.
Oh, man. I didn't know that you still had
Been waiting to drop that one.
I didn't know that you still had my first review in your back pocket. Oh, man. All right. Well, before we get started, we have a word from our sponsor.
Manufacturers are facing extraordinary challenges today. With labor shortages, supply chain disruptions, and a changing workforce, complex industrial technology doesn't cut it on the front line. What's needed is a new way of working that will not only meet throughput goals, but change the shop floor culture to one of winning, where every worker feels they play a part in achieving the company's goals for success. What's needed is Red Zone, the connected workforce solution.
And we're back. And just a reminder before we get started, Red Zone's connected workforce software solution enables manufacturers to empower frontline teams in production, maintenance, and quality to contribute their full potential and achieve company goals around productivity and throughput. Red Zone software enables manufacturers, big and small, to boost their plant's productivity, increase employee engagement, and lower turnover. All right, let's get started with our first story this week. Second Hyundai supplier accused of violating child labor laws. On Monday, the Department of Labor accused SL Alabama of employing underage workers at a factory in Alexander City, Alabama. The company is a subsidiary of SL Corporation, a South Korean company, and it makes headlights, rear lights, and other parts for Hyundai and Kia. According to Reuters, which was able to review the federal court filings, SL Alabama has repeatedly violated labor laws since last November. This includes, quote, employing oppressive child labor and minors under 16 years old. Minors under the age of 16 are prohibited from working in most industrial factory settings by federal and Alabama law. The company admitted that children worked at the factory, but blamed an outside labor recruitment firm for hiring them. In July, Smart Alabama, a Hyundai subsidiary, was accused of employing children as young as 12 years old at the stamping plant. Hyundai said illegal employment practices are not tolerated. A settlement is already in the works. SL has agreed to stop hiring minors, punish any managers who knew about the practice, and temporarily cut ties with any recruiters that hire underage workers. Anna, I was upset to see another story like this, particularly coming from the same company.
It's so crazy. I wasn't obviously glad to see this story, but I was glad to see this coming back into the news cycle because as we discussed on the prior podcast where we covered the first incident, this was really a blip on the radar for a lot of people. We didn't see Hyundai impacted really in any way. Mm-hmm. Nobody was trying to boycott or make a big deal about, Hyundai responding publicly and what they were going to do. It was just really like it was a quick turn in the news cycle and then it was done. And so I think it's a good thing that the federal government has taken notice here. Obviously, this is another company, but the similarities are pretty striking in terms of what they were doing. And then also Hyundai's response.
Yeah.
They issued a very similar statement last time about not tolerating this. And it just feels like very hollow to me, and sort of this useless denial, trying to distance themselves from these practices. So what do you mean you don't tolerate it? Because it's continuing to happen.
Yeah.
So you not tolerating it is what exactly? Like you just shaking your fist angrily, like in the air?
It's the fool me once, fool me twice, right? They've been fooled twice. Now it's on them.
Shame on them, though, because I feel like this has to speak to the culture in some way, that this has happened now at two separate entities that are associated with the same supply chain. Seems odd that it would be a random coincidence. Is this the same recruitment agency as the other case? We don't know. But in the other case, they also blamed this problem on recruiting. Either way, I think there's a gap in the due diligence that's taking place on behalf of Hyundai. I mean, if you see companies of this size and stature, they are tracking their supply chain practices back all the way to factories completely overseas. Very difficult, to see into some of those places. They have to send people out globally to, you can't keep an eye on this plant that is literally next door to you, which was the first incident. And this other one is also in Alabama, which is in the same state as their headquarters. Yeah. So to me, when they say that they don't tolerate it, to me, best case scenario on their behalf, this is just poor compliance practices. I think that the article states that although staffing firms help fill industrial jobs nationwide, they have been criticized by labor advocates because they enable employers to outsource responsibility for vetting employees and their eligibility to work. That was from Reuters. That's the crux of it. I mean, that can't continue to happen, because clearly it seems like it's okay for Hyundai to just say, sorry, that wasn't our fault. We would never have done that. Yeah. But they did. But it continues to happen to you. So what's going on there? I don't understand it either. And Jeff, to me, when Hyundai says things like they don't tolerate this type of behavior, it almost sounds like they're saying, hey, we're the victim here.
Yeah, it like you guys said, it's not strong enough. It's kind of like coming out being opposed to, I don't know, we don't like rainy days. They're wrong. They really get in the way of doing things outside. I mean, of course you're opposed to this. This is no kidding. Rainy days. Do something about it. Yeah. And the other part of this, we mentioned other industries. When you're looking at the food industry in particular, the third-party audits for a lot of these food service manufacturers, where they basically work as a contract manufacturer for a bigger brand, those third-party audits are sometimes more stringent than anything from the FDA or OSHA. Exactly. So Hyundai could definitely, especially when you see this happen once in the same general area and in such a horrific manner. And before, we're looking at 12-year-olds working in a stamping factory. Not to make this any less egregious, but wouldn't that sound off some sort of alarm to get in there and be taking a closer look? Yeah. It is ridiculous. Some of the things here, and again, when I present this information, I don't want to make it sound like in any way I'm trying to pacify what happened here. Every time you're employing minors and violating labor laws, it's a horrible thing. It needs to be stopped. One of the things that's interesting, though, when you do look at Alexander City, Alabama, which is where this facility is located, it's got some challenges, okay? When you look at things from an educational perspective, it's about 6 percentage points fewer in terms of high school graduates. When you look at 2- and 4-year degrees, they're about half the national average in terms of the percentage of the workforce. When you look at average income, individuals are about $10,000 less than the U.S. average. When you look at the household income, it's about $23,000 less. Ooh. Violent crime is up like 400% since 2014. My point is, it's a challenged area in a lot of socioeconomic ways. So what you could potentially be seeing, too, is you've got the automotive sector, which needs people, needs workers. You've got an economically challenged area. I don't want to make an excuse in any way, shape, or form for these firms that are finding workers, but maybe they were looking the other way to try to fill these positions. And also, when you look at the average income, it's about $18 an hour just to start. That puts you at $36,000 annually. Not saying, hopefully a 16-year-old is now getting an annual salary here, but there could have been the thought of, hey, maybe we can help some of these folks out who are really struggling by putting somebody in who, even though they shouldn't be there and they are too young, into this type of position. I'm not saying it's right. Yeah. I'm saying you could almost see somebody trying to justify taking shortcuts for some of these reasons. You can understand the justification, but I think it puts a company like Hyundai at too much. Completely agree. At too much risk. And the other,
when it comes to these temp agencies and hiring firms, I understand it because when I was working in college at a factory, I had to be hired through the temp agency, even though they knew who I was, and I had to I had to work there like 4 years before I was hired on. And at the time, they just said it's just simpler. They take care of it when we have to hire and fire people. We just make a phone call and then they don't show up the next day. So I get how it was logistically, maybe some of these services logistically made more sense. But when they're making mistakes like this, where, the article mentions that, it's unknown as to whether or not the company or the labor contractors are going to face any fines or other penalties. But they likely will.
How could they not?
Yeah.
Especially the firm that's responsible for finding these workers and putting them in place. I worked for one of these too one summer, and it was actually kind of great because it was all a bunch of temporary jobs. It was switching all the time.
Yeah.
But even if that is easier, especially when you see it within the same state, within the same sector, everything.
Yeah.
Getting back to Anna's point, the big brother needs to step in here a little bit. Hyundai needs to take some responsibility and try to hold these folks accountable.
Well, and as part of the settlement, they agree to temporarily cut ties with the company.
Forever cut ties.
Yeah,
How about?
just, what? Maybe go out on a limb and be like, sorry, we can't use you anymore as a result of the child laborers on our floor. I don't know. It's I found it very frustrating, especially because SL Alabama, quote, repeatedly violated labor regulations. And we kind of mentioned this when we were shooting this. It feels like this is the beginning of something bigger. We've seen 2 stories like this come out really close in terms of timing. I feel like we might see a few more of these. Hopefully just in the Alabama area, but maybe it's a broader problem.
Well, and you play both sides of it, right? Because you want to know if it's going on, but man, you really hope you don't hear about more of these stories because you don't want it to be true.
No. Well, and the other thing is, you talk about it being a really impoverished and, kind of undereducated area, but you don't need much of an education to be a plant manager and say, that's a kid. He didn't even drive here, Yeah. It's, I don't know. I think a lot of it, like we talked previously, is on the management. Also, the article stressed that they don't know how many workers, underage workers, work there or what they did. Because Jeff, to your point, I could kind of see if it was a headlight and rear light, maybe assembly area. Maybe they didn't know that it was a place they couldn't be. And it's a fairly big plant and a 650 employees. But even with that many people there, you got to know when the babies.
Yeah.
Yeah. SL did mention that they're cooperating with the investigation, and this is another thing that I found interesting. They're installing a verification system to make sure that it doesn't happen again. So maybe get one of those sooner next time.
Yeah.
All right. Our next most popular story this week. Federal injunction forces pharmaceutical manufacturer to close doors. On Friday, Morton Grove Pharmaceuticals, an Illinois pharmaceutical manufacturer, was ordered to stop making and selling adulterated drugs. The company was also ordered to destroy all drugs in the factory not deemed medically necessary. Morton Grove manufactures prescription and over-the-counter drugs, including cough syrup and nasal spray. The company is a subsidiary of Workhart, an Indian company. According to the Department of Justice, the company violated the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act by failing to prevent cross-contamination, failing to reject contaminated drug lots, and failing to investigate the root cause of the contamination. The company has been inspected and warned by the FDA multiple times after repeated violations. The FDA inspected the facility in 2011, 2014, 2016, 2019, and 2021, and has issued several warnings. The company agreed to settle, and as a result, the parent company is shutting the doors on its Lone American factory, and it's going to sell the building. Instead, it's going to use U.S. contract manufacturers to make products sold in North America. Anna, I just couldn't believe how many times this facility was inspected and warned over 11 years. Mm-hmm. And nothing was done until now.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you look at a case like this because you do not have all of the specific details. And I know sometimes, for me, when I first saw this, and they talked about how the drugs needed to be destroyed that were produced there, except for the ones that were deemed medically necessary.
Right.
Honestly, my first thought there was, when you read something like that, I feel like it sort of suggests to people that this is an issue of compliance and maybe a technicality or paperwork or something, not an issue of safety. Because if the drugs are contaminated or adulterated, why are we giving them to the most medically fragile people out there? Like, that doesn't, to me, that's sort of a strange situation. And so I think it encourages people to think that this plant is being shut down due to a technicality, which is, there's obviously so much more than that here, right? Like the article states about like failing to reject the drug lots that were potentially contaminated, but they also failed to establish proper lab controls and sterilized environments, which is pretty important. Like they're making like sterile nasal spray and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, so, while the company attempted to address these problems, they didn't do so adequately enough, and the FDA pointed out their history of noncompliance. This is not the plant that you want producing the saline that you give to your baby or the cough medicine that you take when you have COVID.
Yeah.
That's why I find it strange that those handful of products are still being allowed to be distributed. I'm sure that it has to do with the supply chain here, and just if they're unavailable, it's worse. But what if they're available and contaminated?
Yeah. I think that's part of it, is that if they're available and possibly contaminated, it's better than not being available at all. Because part of the court documents, which were just a treat to read through, they have to, there are different procedures that they have to go through in the event that they're no longer capable of even manufacturing the medically necessary drugs. And we'll get into the specific drugs in a minute. But like, they have to notify the FDA, because if they can't make them anymore, there's possibly going to be a shortage, stuff like that. Which it is actually interesting to see that there are those kind of protocols in place, because it made me think of the baby formula shortage.
Yeah.
And it was like, wait, did they not have the same thing in place where they got to be like, hey, just a heads up, guys, we're not making any of this stuff? So that was the impression I got, was that, they can burn all the NyQuil or whatever. It wasn't NyQuil. Sorry. They didn't mention any brand specifically. But, they did mention cough syrup and nasal spray. And, I mean, those are like the two I take.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you kind of you're also interested what it was. But Jeff, what was your thought? Were you thinking it was, just a paper pushing problem, or? No,
I think for the FDA to get involved at this level, it was a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I think they definitely had some operational issues there. They were violating some good manufacturing processes, some GMPs, which in pharmaceuticals is your Bible.
Yeah.
Like you cannot go against that, even if it doesn't impact the efficacy of the product. Okay, there is a process, and you follow this to the letter of the law, and they were obviously not doing that. A couple of the medicines, you were going to talk about these, but the one I had to bring up was amlodipine, which is a blood pressure medication that I take. So it was interesting when you see some of the other stuff that they also produce here. They are generic drugs, so there should be enough sort of in the supply chain, enough other folks doing this as well.
Yeah.
It's also kind of an interesting sort of historical lesson here on the pharmaceutical marketplace. So this company, Morton Grove Pharmaceuticals, was founded in 1990. It was private equity backed, and right around the early 2000s, there was this really a shift in the way the pharmaceutical companies were working. The big guys were really frustrated because they were spending all of this money in R&D developing drugs. By the time then it got to market, they had a limited amount of time before their patents and their trademarks and everything else would run out, and then it become a generic, and everybody else could get involved.
Yeah.
So what they really shifted to is a lot of these startups as development drugs, and then they became, contract manufacturers. And that's what this was. This facility was a contract manufacturer. It was bought in 2007 by an Indian company, Wockhardt. So since that time, Wockhardt has struggled mightily with all of these FDA regulations. It's affected a number of different parts of their business. To deal with the legal ramifications, the operational shutdowns, and all the losses from this facility here in the U.S., they're thinking that's what led to them selling actually some other facilities, some other operations in other countries.
Okay.
To the point of like $250 million in some of these other facilities that they sold off to recoup some of these losses based on the FDA getting more heavily involved in them violating these production processes.
Okay.
So we talk about teeth from some of these regulatory agencies. Here we can see the FDA doing the right thing, stepping in, making sure whatever they're doing wrong there, they're not doing it anymore. You have to give them some appreciation here too. We've definitely been critical of them in the past. Here we're seeing these regulatory agencies doing what they're supposed to do and keeping bad products out of the market.
Yeah, I mean, they were able to really close the doors after a short 11 years.
Well, like you mentioned, the numerous visits and everything else that they went through. And I think what this also sort of puts under a microscope is just contract manufacturers. It's not your Pfizers. It's not your other big name companies. They're getting more scrutiny from the regulatory authorities, which is important, obviously.
Just to shine a light on current good manufacturing practices. So these are regulations that force manufacturers to control drug manufacturing processes and procedures to ensure that drugs have the strength, quality, and purity for safe and effective use, and don't put people at risk. So some of the important things about medically necessary drugs are drugs that are used to treat serious diseases or medical conditions or are unavailable from another manufacturer, like I had mentioned. Now, Morton Grove makes 3 medically necessary drugs. Carbamazepine, an oral
Don't even do it, David.
suspension. I got it. An anti-epileptic. Dexamethasone elixir, which is used to treat various conditions, anything from arthritis to bowel disorders, and megastrol acetate oral suspension. I got better.
As you went, yeah.
Which treats severe weight loss and malnutrition with AIDS patients. So, Jeff, I didn't see the blood pressure medicine on there, but like you said, at least that is available, hopefully, from other manufacturers. But these seem like some really important drugs for some really...
Well, definitely in lower quantities as well, very targeted application, obviously. So those you would definitely hope that... And there are a ton of these other contract manufacturers who are probably ready and willing to pick the ball up where these folks dropped it.
Take their business.
Yeah.
Okay, our next most popular story. High-altitude military drone crashes after more than 2 months of flight. The Zephyr is a solar-powered drone developed by Airbus that is undergoing testing by the U.S. military. The drone took off in mid-June and broke its own record for longest drone flight. The drone flies at altitudes of more than 60,000 feet using power harvested by solar arrays across its 75-foot wingspan, although it's a discrepancy as to whether or not it's 75 feet or 82 feet. The previous record was 26 days of flight. The new mark that the Zephyr set is 64 days. And on day 64, Airbus said, quote, "An issue ended the flight campaign."
An issue.
An issue. That sounds ominous. According to publicly available flight data, at the end, the craft crashed into Arizona going 4,500 feet per minute, which just sounds incredibly fast, but it's only 51 miles per hour.
That's
still fast.
The battery on this thing weighs 52 pounds.
Yeah, which is crazy because the plane's only 166.
Yeah, that would really bust you up.
That would. It was just such an interesting figure. Like, it was going 4,500 feet per minute. And I was like, well, I mean, I get they wanted a bigger number, but 50 miles an hour. It's going 50. Still fast. Hey, I got in a car accident at 25. I know damage can happen going slow. Now, the mission is part of the Army's airborne sensor experiment. The drone could one day be used for surveillance or even to disrupt radar systems. Now, while this is the longest drone flight, it didn't beat the record for the longest overall flight. Robert Tim and John Cook flew a Cessna 172 for more than 64 days and 22 hours in 1959. Anna, I can't imagine that this is a record you'd be looking to break.
So my first thought here when I saw how close it came to breaking the record was this must have been sabotage.
Yeah. Robert and John were out there with...
Yeah, this happened in like the 1950s, I think.
Yeah.
They're very old, but they...
No, they're very old, but they're still
kids
capable.
got out there.
Yeah.
No, I decided to look actually at the record holders. Robert Tim and John Cook And if you wonder if this is a memory that they treasure dearly, the Smithsonian quotes John Cook as saying the following when asked if he would ever try to break his own consecutive flying time record. Quote, "Next time I feel in the mood to fly endurance, I'm going to lock myself in a garbage can with the vacuum cleaner running and have Bob serve me T-bone steaks chopped up in a thermos bottle. That is until my psychiatrist opens for business in the morning," unquote.
Oh, man. So a delightful memory.
Sounds like it might have been tough.
Man.
So maybe this is best left for the drone. I think we'll see Airbus right back out there trying to do this again. I mean, it's really cool technology. The fact that it flies at like 76,000 feet, I think is how high this one got, really makes sense because it can avoid some of the weather conditions, some of the air traffic that has always been a concern for drones and other types of drones, right? So yeah, I don't know. And plus the energy source is pretty exciting. So I'm hoping to see more of this, hopefully getting to day 65 next time.
Yeah. Jeff, it sounds like Robert and John just needed a little bit better, meal prep.
1950s, they didn't have
advancements in microwave technology.
They didn't have
help the next group.
astronaut ice cream back then.
Do you think Robert and John ever spoke again? They're just like, you know what? I'm gonna need a minute, John.
Yeah.
I'll call you in the 1980s.
Yeah.
Oof. That is a long time. No, this is awesome. And when you look at this thing, it is kind of crazy looking. It almost looks like something you're talking about your sons with the paper airplanes. I mean, this looks almost like something that would come out of that.
Oh, yeah.
Look at the wingspan and everything. Continuing on my mantra of the thing that leads to the thing,
yes.
you could see a lot of things coming out of this.
Yeah.
I think one of the coolest, and this is right off of Airbus's website, they talk about connectivity. They estimate about 4 billion people around the world have no internet access. This has the capability of extending that type of access. They're saying that one Zephyr, it has the coverage equivalent to 250 cell towers.
Oh, wow.
So when you look at what it could do in terms of communication and connecting folks, they also, again, this is according to Airbus, they said no other aerial solution offers direct-to-device 4G, 5G access on a persistent day and night basis. So, to Anna's point, this thing flies above the clouds, the weather, has a lot of opportunities there in keeping people connected and communicating. Mm-hmm. If they could do anything, providing any type of payload here, you'd also think there's an opportunity to maybe ease some of the supply chain and logistics challenges we're dealing with. And you got to love the fact that it runs on solar. I mean, that's amazing.
I like the subtle swipe that they took at Starlink. Just like, but it's more reliable than other solutions and getting you 4 and 5G. Talking about it carrying a payload, that was part of what the Army was hoping to do. Is like, I think that was the next test they were going to do, is see if the Zephyr could fly and drop off multiple payloads to various locations without ever coming back down. One thing that I liked about this was that further flight demonstrations of the solar-powered uncrewed aircraft have been postponed into 2023.
Uh-oh.
And at first I was like, is that because they have to build a new one? Mm-hmm. But I mean, and that could be part of the case, but the team has to look through all the data to figure out the flight's, quote, unexpected termination. Can we just say crash? It's like, yeah, it was up there a long time and it crashed. We did great. Don't just like, it was an unexpected termination.
Got cloudy? I don't know.
That sounds like something you passively aggressively say to your partner when you come home from a bad day at work. There was an unexpected termination. I'll be in the basement. It's also important to note that no one was injured or put at risk as a result of the crash. I'd be interested to see what happened. I mean, hopefully it just crashed into the desert. But I would also, if you have not seen this thing, to Jeff's point, you got to check out the photos of the Zephyr because it is deceivingly large, but also light. I mean, the discrepancy between whether or not it has a 75 or 82 foot wingspan, it's still like, that is a huge wingspan and still only weighs 166 pounds. Mm-hmm. I mean, it makes sense if it's running on solar power, but just some incredible engineering there.
Absolutely.
All right. Our next most popular story this week. Father uses son to test Tesla self-driving. Another day, another self-driving controversy. A new debate over Tesla's full self-driving beta software questions whether it can stop for children in its path. The speculation started when the Dawn Project showed a Tesla Model 3 driving in a lane marked by cones and plowing through a children-sized mannequin, or a child-sized mannequin. Multiple. There are a lot of mannequins. It was like a line of kids. Dan O'Dowd, CEO of Green Hills Software, calls Tesla's feature the worst commercial software he's ever seen and says it's time to shut it down. Auto shop owner Carmine Cupani challenged the Dawn Project's claims in a, let's call it, interesting fashion. Cupani drove a 2022 Tesla Model S Plaid using the non-beta version of Autopilot right at his 11-year-old son, who was standing in the middle of the road at approximately 35 miles per hour. Now, the car decelerated and came to a complete stop all on its own, which, Anna, I guess is a good outcome. That's what we were hoping for on this one.
I just really have a massive eye roll for this entire thing. I mean, using your child as a pawn in this stunt is beyond ridiculous. I think we can probably agree on that right away.
Vehemently.
And also, just like for anyone who's taking it upon themselves to defend the integrity of a multi-billion-dollar automaker and their technology, I don't know, maybe I'm just lazy or indifferent, but like, what? What do you...
Yeah.
I don't know. And, secondly, we've discussed this before, but this technology has created so much misapplication and misinterpretation and misuse, and frankly, drama, that I think it kind of invites this kind of divisiveness, which we see here in this person's like weird, extreme compulsion to defend full self-driving for some reason. I mean, people are such Tesla enthusiasts, and I think like there's kind of a hero worship too around Elon Musk for some people. But he doesn't need you to put your child at risk to demo his technology on YouTube. Like, what he does need is to test it in a controlled environment and in a comprehensive manner. Like, these kind of stunts, like, I think all they do is encourage people to do more of them. Meanwhile, Tesla has raised the price again on its full self-driving, which has gone up tremendously since the start of the year. It was like $10,000 at the beginning of this year. Now it's going to be $15,000 by September. And these price increases are to pay for the R&D that's going into this. So not only are you testing out this tech on yourself and your family for some reason, and really everyone around you, but you're paying Tesla for the privilege of doing that. So like, I don't know, don't fall for the hype. Like, don't put your child's safety at risk, certainly in defense of this emerging technology. Like, that is not a consumer's role in this. Elon Musk is not going to be sharing his profits with you. I guarantee it. Just, to me, this entire charade, this was just absolutely ridiculous.
At best, you might get a tweet or maybe a like on a tweet about your stunt. At best. Jeff, what is your take on this whole sort of theater around the situation?
Well, first of all, if I can just get back up on my soapbox from last week.
Yes, get on it.
BMW story. This is straight from Tesla's website. Autopilot is an advanced driver assistance system that enhances safety and convenience behind the wheel. Autopilot, enhanced autopilot, and full self-driving capability are intended for use with a fully attentive driver who has their hands on the wheel and is prepared to take over at any moment. Hey, dummy, you don't need to put your kid out in the middle of the road. That isn't even what it's supposed to do. You are still supposed to be in control of the car. It is supposed to relax the driver, ease the driver. Maybe you can look at something coming in on your phone, whatever. You still have to be aware and get in control of the vehicle. The whole problem, again, is the verbiage these automakers, including Tesla and especially Elon Musk, continue to use. Call it assisted. Call it automated, which is what BMW does. Don't call it autopilot. Don't call it full self-driving capability. It's not. It's not what it is.
As long as you're really paying attention, it's full self-driving.
Man.
You didn't say when the quote ended on Tesla's website. Was the "Hey dummy" on there, or was that?
That's me.
Oh, okay.
That's all me.
Okay. Editorial.
I wish, actually, I mean, that's one thing that Tesla could do on its website when things like this pop up on the owner's manual online. They could be like, hey, dummy, don't run it at your kid.
Yeah. Well, and I think what he was trying to do is he has a vested interest, right? Because does he repair or sell?
He repairs,
Tesla. So he's trying to sort of validate his position and champion his brand that he is supporting. It doesn't make you smart. It just means you are promoting something using your kid, which is really stupid. So the other thing that is interesting theater as well is this whole connection with Dan O'Dowd, who took out the Wall Street Journal ad, basically just ripping on this software. If he was coming from more of a completely less self-serving perspective, maybe we could buy in his argument. But his company, Green Hills Software, they're the ones that produce all of the driver-assisted technology. And they've been working with all the major OEs. So he's got a vested interest in not developing the self-driving software because he wants his lane protection software. He wants his emergency braking sensors, all of those things that he works on to continue to be the primary focus for all these automakers. So it's interesting that, he's kind of the little guy. He's swinging up a little bit here at Elon Musk, trying to get in the game. But what he's really doing is getting more self-promotion for his company and what they're doing. At the end of the day, you've got two billionaires bickering over something that, as we said last week, with all of the survey responses or all the data that's out there, 3 out of 4 American auto buyers couldn't care less about.
Yeah, don't want it.
Are not interested in. So stop sacrificing your kid for the sake of trying to validate a technology nobody's worried about right now.
Jesse, who's watching us live, Jeff, says that she's really appreciating the grinds my gears version of Jeff.
Darn right. Give me a graphic.
Can we get
somebody make me a soapbox so I can get up on here.
That's what this podcast is missing, like the panel of buttons that all make sound effects.
I need something to help though, because my knees are bad. Like to actually get up on a soapbox might take me a little bit.
Oh, gotcha.
Oh, okay, yep.
I thought the podcast was going to turn into a sitter. Just like.
So we need like
Not
some
opposed.
sort of gel-based surface on the top of your
Yeah, could we
soapbox.
get some sort of orthotic maker to
wonderful.
sponsor the podcast?
3 soapboxes, please.
This week, Kupani's video was actually taken down for violating YouTube's community guidelines, which apparently have something against driving a car towards a child. So luckily that was taken off the platform. In another video, I don't know if you guys watched this one, but Franklin Katamuro made what he called Box Boy. It was a
Man.
and we're talking a crude box boy out of boxes, and next to the box boy was a little cardboard SpaceX rocket made out of like a toilet paper roll. A Tesla using full self-driving beta drives up to box boy, slows down at first, and then mows it down.
Yeah, that was the weird part. It slowed down.
Yeah, it stopped.
And it's just like, screw this guy. Boom.
Yeah, it's like it got close enough to notice, like, that's not a real boy.
Nice try.
Yeah.
So it would still just mow down a big stack of boxes? Like, is that
Well, that's
that's what we want?
Yeah, that's not better.
No, that's one. After people were commenting about it, it was just a box. It's like, no, it's still a 3-dimensional object in front of the car.
Yeah.
It should still stop. No, Box Boy is never going to be the same. No, this was. I found it to be a really interesting story, and I'd like to learn more about this Kupani guy, because I want to know the aha moment when he was sitting in his house and he's like, you know what? I'm going to put all of this to bed. Son, we're going outside.
Yeah. Hey, Eric, your Project Sundays don't sound so bad anymore, do they?
It's true. Yeah. Dad, where do you want me? Right there. In front of the car? What?
Yeah.
Teaching weird lessons at the Kupani house. All right. Our most popular story this week. 5 cars that won't be around for 2023. Automakers try to keep it low-key when they kill off a product line. Models often get the axe because of slow sales, but it's not exactly something they want to advertise. SUVs and crossovers are in fashion, so we're going to see more small SUVs and sedans continue to reach their final destination. Edmunds recently put together a list of 5 notable models that are on the way out. And We'll start with them. We're going ascending order from cheapest to most expensive. The first is the Hyundai Accent, which has an MSRP of $17,740. It's Hyundai's smallest and most affordable model. An inexpensive commuter car may be a good first car, Edmunds says, with a roomy cabin and comfortable ride, but limited tech options, obviously because of the price point. The Ford EcoSport at $23,335 is Ford's smallest and most inexpensive SUV. It suffered from poor ride quality, disappointing fuel economy, and a lack of advanced driver aids. Plenty of cargo space, though.
Whoa, Edmunds, you really didn't like that one.
No, they did not care for it. The Buick Encore for $25,795, made smaller and more affordable to entice younger customers. It's not as luxurious as other Buicks, and it's a quiet ride, but lacked cargo space and decent fuel efficiency. The Mercedes A-Class, a $35,000 vehicle, was one of Edmunds' highest-rated small luxury sedans. But the car maker has similar-sized vehicles in the same price range. It's well-built, and really the only criticism was a lack of rear legroom. The last on the list was the Toyota Avalon at $37,920. It's being replaced by a hybrid sedan called the Crown. The Avalon has been around since the mid-90s and has performed well over the years. Jeff Edmunds says you can't blame automakers for delivering what's in demand. I feel like I hear that from you a lot.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a lot of tears spent on losing any of these vehicles. I don't think there's a ton of loyalty behind them.
No, the Avalon doesn't bring the fervor that a Mustang does.
No, and I think whenever I see these cuts, you kind of hope, that these are good decisions, and what they'll do is they allow for some production efficiencies going into the mix that hopefully create some cost benefits that can be passed along to the end buyer, just because the car market is so tough right now. Mm-hmm. Just kind of going on that, just looking at a couple of these vehicles, I just looked online at a local car dealership. Now, what was the MSRP for the Honda Accent?
The Accent is $17,740.
Okay, so that's probably the base model,
yeah.
I'm going to assume. We look at a 2017 model with 52,000 miles. Guess what that's going for now?
Under $17,000.
$16,800.
Oh. Ooh, not much.
Not much.
So for a 5-year-old vehicle, 50,000 miles, yeah, like $1,000 less than the base model MSRP.
But do they know about the limited tech options?
I mean, that the fact that it's just limited now, maybe that'll drive up the value. Same thing, I looked for a Ford EcoSport, which, man, these are almost give me cringes when you look at these. This vehicle. But what was the MSRP on the Ford EcoSport?
$23,300.
$23,300 for a brand new one. 2019 Ford EcoSport, under 10,000 miles, $26,000.
What?
Oh my goodness.
So when we talk about
ridiculous.
eliminating some of these models, hopefully again this goes into production efficiencies for higher selling vehicles. We can see some price breaks, and maybe hopefully at some point we can also see that impacting the used car market, because as evidenced by a couple of these, it's still pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So.
The EcoSport, I can't remember when that came out, but that's definitely, I mean, you understand what they're trying to do with that name. Just we'll call it the EcoSport, so they'll know it'll be small but efficient. It'll be green, yeah. I mean, I feel like it took a think tank just months to come up with EcoSport. Anna, any love lost for the 5 vehicles we won't see next year?
Well, I mean, Jeff's talking a lot about price, and I agree. I mean, it's a touch disappointing to see the demise of these because so many of them were kind of on the low end of what's out there in terms of price, like that Accent, the EcoSport, the Encore, all starting around $25K or less. Mm-hmm. Like, if you consider the average price of a new vehicle now is pushing $50K, that's a significant savings to kind of start with one of those lower end vehicles, and to see some of those go away, that obviously makes things a little bit tougher. But that said, automakers really have to make a lot of hard choices right now in order to trim those portfolios down to make room for. Many of them have as much as a dozen new EV models on the slate for the next couple of years. Right. They don't really have a choice. So I think we can get used to this, and I envision that it's going to cut a little bit deeper as time goes, because they're going to have to start cutting models I think that people actually like.
Yeah.
Like I don't think, like you said, nobody's crying tears over the EcoSport, but who knows what's next, you know?
True.
Because if you look at so I think, you know, Dodge is sort of an interesting case study here. We just covered this in the last week about what they're doing with their muscle cars. They're churning out some Challenger and Charger EVs because people like them, they're profitable, but muscle cars really drag down that fleet-wide average MPG, and that's what a lot of these automakers are trying to target. They have to get that overall number of everything that they sell under a certain miles per gallon. So like automakers can't do that with every model, what Dodge is doing with the Charger and the Challenger, right? It just doesn't work that way. So they're going to have to probably look at least some moderately popular vehicles that are going to have to get axed to make way for some of these newer, more efficient stuff. That's just the reality. So we'll most likely see this accelerate in the coming years, in my opinion.
No, and about the accent, I know that you've brought it up before, but you like to see, I mean, this was like they said, it was a good starter car. You want something like that to exist on the market. I mean, I guess I don't. When I think starter car, I certainly don't think something new. Like my first car was like an '86 Oldsmobile, and I don't even think it was so big. I don't even think it fit in the studio. But
I mean, that has changed a lot. Like now with my kids driving and stuff like that, the comparable $1,500 beater that we would start out with, it's just not there.
Doesn't exist. Yeah.
So, for a number of reasons, but yeah, so it is different. But you're right. It's gonna be interesting to see what does get cut. I mean, we've already seen some of these popular vehicles like the Impala go away, which was really surprising.
Yeah.
Oh, and the Leaf. R.I.P.
Did you notice the awkward amount of silence after you said that?
Yeah.
Where everybody just said we don't care.
No one cares.
No one
about
cares.
The Leaf.
Is what everyone was thinking about.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is natural selection.
No, I know, but you're right. We have talked about it before. Like, are automakers cutting vehicles that people don't want, or are people not buying them because they no longer exist? And automakers are cutting vehicles that are not as profitable. The argument could be made either way, I guess. But.
Yeah. I nearly bought the Buick Encore when we were testing cars and settled on the RAV. We got into a Buick Encore, and it was, it says it doesn't have the luxury of other Buicks, but I would say that comparatively. Between Buick and some of the other automakers and Toyota, like the Encore was the nicest interior that we saw. Yeah. But it was like just a tall sedan. Like,
it was tight. Did you try sitting in the back seat?
I tried, because I thought I'd not only tried sitting back there, but I imagined what it would look like with one car seat at the time, and then it has barely any storage in back. Yeah. It's almost a hatchback.
Well, that's the key. Tried to sit in the back seat. I could not.
Yeah, no, it was because it was one of the nicest cars that we test drove, but it just there was this real push to make like a very small SUV, and I just think logistically, I don't need a taller sedan that gets worse gas mileage.
Yeah, but guys, can you just let the Buick Encore rest in peace? I mean, we don't have to be
pile on.
Standing over its grave. Like,
no, I am. Like, I mean, this is me like 4 years ago being like, I was right. You didn't stand a chance.
Don't let David give the eulogy, man. Like, this is intense.
Yeah, the Buick Encore. See ya. It was loved by no one. If you drive a Buick Encore, consider upgrading to a Toyota RAV. No. It's but I mean, I don't like. Normally, when we cover models like the Mustang or anything else with like a little bit of even the Impala, like you said, even the Leaf, people were joking about online, but people were interested. This is a very popular page on the site, and then just nobody commented. It was like
everyone's just like,
yeah, no,
like
that
they read it and just nod.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, well, before we move on to In Case You Missed It, we have another word from our sponsor.
Manufacturers are facing extraordinary challenges today. With labor shortages, supply chain disruptions, and a changing workforce, complex industrial technology doesn't cut it on the front line. What's needed is a new way of working that will not only meet throughput goals, but change the shop floor culture to one of winning, where every worker feels they play a part in achieving the company's goals for success. What's needed is Red Zone, the connected workforce solution.
And we're back. And before we get into, in case you missed it, just a reminder that Red Zone's connected software solution enables manufacturers to empower frontline teams in production, maintenance, and quality to contribute their full potential and achieve company goals around productivity and throughput. Red Zone software enables manufacturers, big and small, to boost their plant's productivity, increase employee engagement, and lower turnover.
Wow, I think you just contributed your full potential there.
I know. That was it. That was the top. That was the top line right there.
As far as it goes up. Okay.
Well, let's move on to, in case you missed it, see if we can get a few more dramatic reads in there. Some of the stories that maybe weren't as popular on our website, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. Anna, I'd like to start with you this week. What's your, in case you missed it?
Okay, so this story had, I think, a little legs outside of just our market. We ran it because it was just so interesting and had to do with product innovation, problem solving, I guess. The story is about how a Janet Jackson song from 1989 had the power to crash laptops, and the details of this are very strange. So a Janet Jackson song from 1989 is called Rhythm Nation. You may know it.
Yeah.
I hope you all know it.
I'm familiar.
Yeah. So it apparently had the power to crash some models of Windows laptops, which was recently revealed in a blog post from a Windows developer named Raymond Chen. He said that Rhythm Nation contains some natural resonant frequencies that wreaked havoc with 5,400 RPM laptops from multiple manufacturers, and they would cause certain hard drives to vibrate to the point of failure. So much so that they could make a laptop that was sitting nearby, if you were playing it, to crash as well, not just the one you were playing. Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
I know, it's crazy. So to fix the problem back then, they added this custom audio filter that would detect and then remove that frequency during playback. Chen said that he worried that in the many years since this workaround was added, that nobody would remember why it's there. Mm-hmm. Though he kind of added that nobody uses this type of hard drive anymore. The technology's changed. So it's really not that necessary. But he said at the time they put this sort of digital code in that was like a do not remove. So it may still be there. But anyway, I enjoyed the story for its weirdness, of course. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was also a good reminder that our devices are really so fallible, and we really put them most at risk through our own behavior. Janet Jackson doesn't do the most damage. We do with our terrible passwords and clicking on shady links and stuff like that. So for every crazy incident like this of a computer bug, there are probably 10,000 malware incidents due to bad practices on behalf of a user. Those don't generate the kind of funny headlines that we see with this. But anyway, just a good reminder to keep it tight.
Who figured this out?
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So
how?
They I think it was just it was happening.
Yeah.
And then and then at Microsoft they tried it with a bunch of different machines, and they realized that it could actually just generate a crash on other machines as well.
I mean, how many reports did they get where people are like, no, I was okay. This is going to sound silly, but I was listening to Janet Jackson. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it crashed. And then some engineer is just like, hey, did you guys notice?
We got, so many Janet Jacksons in the, where they're, submit feedback, and you think it just goes into, the garbage somewhere. Yeah. It really was read.
Yeah. Well, I mean, would you think that the engineers behind this are people of the world today that are looking for a better way of life? Would you say that?
It's time to move on.
Miss Jackson didn't realize how powerful she was. Jeff, did she say she's sorry?
I don't think so, but you kind of wonder now, wouldn't this be a way to sort of re-energize sales for this album? Just let this
people
go viral.
People to try it again, and
YouTube videos of people wrecking old laptops just listening to this music.
It's a good song.
It would be interesting to see the bump on sales, because I'm sure it did. Yeah. Even just playing a little bit of Hurdle every once in a while, I'm like, that Whitney Houston song is a banger. And then you buy it on Amazon for 99 cents, and you're just like, and your kids are like, what is this, Dad? And you're like, it's a hit. Dance with me.
It's called I Will Always Love You. And it is the greatest song ever written. That was the one, right?
No, it was...
Want to dance with somebody?
I'm going to dance with somebody. Yeah. Because I wanted to dance. I was just like,
So I need to find out. I'm sorry. I don't
No. I was just throwing out Whitney Houston deal.
In the morning, like after I work out, like I'll listen to like MTV has like a classic videos on in the morning.
I don't want to know.
There
what that
must
is.
be. I need to know if there is some sort of like inside joke, because at almost the exact same time, regardless of what morning I listen, they have the Rick Astley video on there.
Oh, so
they're Rickrolling people every day.
Yeah, they're
It's like
Rickrolling.
the exact. I cannot not see this video between 7 and 7:15 in the morning.
So is it like it's time to get ready for work when Rick Astley comes on?
Well, it's like, okay, then I need to stop. Like I'm trying to cool down after working out, and it's like, yeah, okay, I need to go take a shower now because Rick Astley's on.
Every day? I got to try harder.
It's
Well, he's never going to let
weirdly
you
like
go.
Pavlovian.
All right. My In Case You Missed It this week was a story about reshoring. Multiple supply chain risks are accelerating reshoring. In 2021, the private and federal push for domestic supply of essential goods pushed new jobs as a result of reshoring to a record high. According to a new report from the Reshoring Initiative, 2022 is continuing these gains. The current 2022 projection of jobs announced is around 350,000 new jobs this year, up from the record set in 2021 of 260,000. So why is this happening? Supply chain gaps and the need for greater self-sufficiency, destabilizing geopolitical and climate forces as well. The upward trend is due almost exclusively to companies filling supply chain gaps of essential products like electric batteries, semiconductors, PPE, pharmaceuticals, rare earths, and renewable energy. So far, the top 3 states by jobs announced are Kentucky, North Carolina, and Georgia. And I wanted to share the story because we talk about whether or not reshoring is a reality, and it is. There are some states that are doing better. I mean, these are stories that we cover almost every day, in particularly these states. And it's, I don't know, I just a lot of people doubt it. A lot of people think, if not reshoring, nearshoring. But I thought this was some positive information to come out. I mean, it's on pace. I think they started recording it in like 2010, 2011, and it's on pace to create 1.6 million new jobs in America as a result of reshoring. I thought that was encouraging.
Yeah, this is awesome news. So is a lot of the information they put about direct foreign investment and what they're doing here, which isn't transferring jobs, but just investment for foreign countries here in the U.S., especially in this area. We did a lot of stuff on Kentucky with a lot of the EV stuff that's been going on there, new factories going up. North Carolina and Georgia have definitely benefited from some automotive developments in that area. The other thing that's interesting, when you look at some of these sectors that they're looking at here, electric batteries, semiconductors, rare earths, and even renewable energy a little bit, you have to feel that's in direct response to concerns about China and getting supply chains out of that neck of the woods and getting them over here.
Yeah. Anna, I didn't know if you had a chance to read this story, but what were your thoughts on, the current state of reshoring in America?
Yeah, it's exciting. I think it comes with some challenges that we need to address as a country, especially right now. The timeliness of it is just the fact that we don't have a lot of unemployed people that are looking for jobs.
The labor issue.
Yeah, so I know people will, if these are manufacturing jobs, great. People will probably move from jobs that don't pay as well and are not as stable into these, but it will create some vacancies. I mean, just in the 2-year period here, that's 600,000 new jobs. At some point, we're going to have to deal with
finding people.
I know you're excited for robots in McDonald's.
Garbage.
Get used to it, I guess. It's something that I think we need. We've talked so long. This has just been the political rhetoric for so long, and in industry of job creation. That is the best thing that we could possibly do, is create jobs. Now I think that the situation is a little bit gray, and people need to decide, are these the right jobs? Are they competitive? Otherwise, you're creating, I think, some problems there that you need to figure out how to solve. We don't want to create more risks by doing this, right?
Right.
So I'm not anti-reshoring. I don't want it to sound like that. I'm just saying that there's more that needs to be done, I think, on the ground. And I know that these places, they're trying to pick these locations selectively based on workforce, right? Nobody's just going into this blindly and just, but yeah, there could be some challenges down the road if we continue at this pace.
Anna is the first person to come out anti-jobs.
Yeah.
That's her stance here.
I am not.
Enough already.
She's against economic development.
I am not anti-jobs, for the record,
Right.
Jeff.
I can be like anti or pro McDonald's robot, but I'm still pro jobs, Anna.
I would like to cancel my order for 3 soapboxes. I will just take one, and it's for me. So I can talk about how much I hate jobs.
Oh my goodness.
It's a bold stand.
That is not true. I'm joking. No, I'm not wrong, though. I mean,
No, you're right. You're right.
It needs to be addressed, I think.
Yeah.
We can't just like blindly commit to continuing creating more and more jobs when we don't have enough people for the jobs that already
pace has
exist,
to be
right?
right.
Yeah, it has to be right, and we need to figure out how to deal with now some of these really entry-level positions that people aren't going to want because they don't pay enough.
Yeah.
So, and maybe that's a boost for the automation industry.
Well, and another piece of news that came out this week that maybe ties in with this a little bit is that the Biden administration put another like $50 million towards apprenticeship programs. And these are, a lot of them are going to community colleges to try and help build a more skilled labor force. And I think the $50 million grant brought it's something like, it's over $170 million that they've put towards apprenticeship programs so far. And so, maybe putting the two of those things together, maybe the workers will be there if Anna doesn't cut all the jobs.
Not
Her and her kind.
Whoa.
Oh, man. Anyway, Jeff, what is your, in case you missed it this week?
So I thought this story was interesting, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but I picked a story about Twin Metals suing the Biden administration to regain some mining leases. So basically, the developers of a proposed copper-nickel mine upstream from the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness in northeastern Minnesota are suing the Biden administration to seek reinstatement of their federal mineral rights and leases. Those are seen as critical to a $1.7 billion underground mine project that these folks want to do up in this area. So basically what's happening, if you go back, this company has owned the rights, the mining rights to this location for upwards of 50 years. They were basically taken away by the Obama administration for environmental reasons. They want to preserve and conserve this area. The Trump administration came in, gave them back to him, and now the Biden administration, when it came in, took them away again. So basically, you've got these folks who've been going back and forth. To me, that's not the biggest issue. The bigger issue is the fact that this area has an estimated 4 billion pounds of copper and nickel, both of which are critical to, guess what, David? Electric vehicle battery production.
Yeah.
Something we've been talking a lot about, something that we want a supply chain for within this country, not relying on these types of metals from any place else. So I think this is going to continue to creep up because you've got the administration really in a bind here. They want to make good on all their environmental promises that got them elected. At the same time, they also want to create an infrastructure for electric vehicles here within the United States. So you need to pick a side in terms of either going with the fact and realizing we are going to have to dig, we are going to have to mine for this stuff, or we're not, and we're going to continue to preserve a lot of this area. Now, there is more to it from an environmental perspective. They're concerned about water quality and all the impacts. We've been over this. Mining is not an environmentally friendly process. It's gotten better. The folks that are in charge of this mine have reassured everybody in the area, hey, nothing bad is going to happen. So, I mean, we should just trust them and just go forward with it, correct?
So,
Right, Anna? Right, Anna? I know that's something you would definitely support because you're so pro-jobs.
Jeff.
All the jobs that this could create, there's no doubt that this is what we'd want to do, right?
I am pro-jobs.
1,500 jobs in the area.
it's
But at what
And
cost?
750 just for the mine and 1,500 for jobs. So I know you're all for this, regardless of the environmental ramifications.
Because of my pro-job stance. I can see why you would think that. I do agree with you that the administration has put itself in a tough position with the language in that bill on electric cars, because that requires some mines. So I don't know how they're going to work their way out of that one.
No, in all seriousness, I don't know which side to go on this. I don't know enough about the environmental elements, but it's just the supply chain stuff.
it's interesting Can you imagine operating this mine or trying to operate, hold on to the lease where Obama kills it, tries to put a 20-year ban on it in the area. Trump gives it back. Then Biden comes out, cancels the leases in January, and then tries to revive the ban again. Now, I get it. So just kind of looking at it, environmental groups have been fighting twin metals, saying that there's a risk of acid mine drainage getting into designated wilderness areas. And my only thought on this is that we have a place in northern Wisconsin, and 10, maybe 20 years ago, it was put at risk because of a mine. There was going to be a copper mine out there, and it was going to drain the lake as a result. So I take concerns, environmental concerns like this when it comes to the quality of water and the wildlife around it very seriously. And I think it's something that should be taken seriously because job growth, making EV batteries are great, but so is protecting our natural resources. And I mean, particularly water.
Like I said, I think you can argue both sides. I get it. The one thing that's interesting, too, is this company has already put up like $500 million in this project, spent that much just in trying to get it ready over the last 12 years.
Yeah.
So what do you do there? If you're going to take it away from them, don't you kind of have to make them whole on some of that other stuff, too?
I'm sure they can sell it for $550 million, get back.
Not if the government takes it, which is essentially what they want to do.
Oh, man.
So it's just, and I think this is going to pop up more. I think we're going to see more of these types of debates, and they take on a new sort of connotation with what we're going after here.
Yeah, with the new industry.
Yeah.
That's a difficult one, Jeff. All right, well, let's move on to our final thoughts before we get out of here this week. Anna, what's your final thought this week?
First of all, I just want to say that I'm not anti-job. Secondly, by the time we come back to you guys next week, all 3 of my kids will have had their first day of school. So I'm hoping that things go well this year. But I will say that the silver lining of the COVID shutdowns, I think, is that all of my kids realize that the prospect of going to in-person school is much better than not going to school or going to school on the computer. So they're generally pretty cooperative about going now. So they're pretty excited, and I'm hoping for a good year. So
that's good.
I'm excited.
Oh my goodness, we had our picnic to allow all the kids to come and put all their supplies in the lockers with their backpacks, and just the vision that I had in my head for it being this beautiful moment with us, like, my wife and I walking with our family arm in arm into this, like, well-lit school together and having this moment to put all of his stuff away was just torn down by chaos of hundreds of kids running everywhere, parents who have given up. That's another way that you can tell the new parents versus the old parents is the new parents or the veterans know enough to just stay back and let the kids go. All of us new parents are just like, yeah, no, we'll be there with you and everything. And it's just like, no, they're on school grounds. Do whatever you have to. You know where to find me. It was, but no, it's the same. Des is going to school for the first time next Thursday, and it's exciting, but it's one of those, like, where did the time go?
I know. I will definitely ugly cry as much as I think I won't. I definitely will.
Yeah, no, it's Carrie's making sure. She's like, we'll do this together, be there for each other. I'm like, yeah, so we can just ugly cry at each other.
Yeah. Someone has tissues.
And like Caden will still be in the back seat, like, can I just go to daycare, please?
Pull yourself together.
Yeah. Oh, Dad is just a mess up there. My final thought this week is it was just nice to be back in the office for nearly a full week. I was able to bump the timeline up a day and work in an office setting amongst adults and professionals and not trying to get my job done with 2 lovely but needy offspring and an equally frustrated partner. The other thing was that yesterday, my wife and I celebrated our 10-year anniversary.
Yeah.
And that was crazy. She had posted about it, and people were already coming and congratulating me, and I didn't know what was happening. They're just like, hey, all right, congratulations. I'm like, thanks.
I know.
What happened? But we have this, every year we forget our anniversary. It's just kind of one of those things that until typically her mom will text us, and then we're like, it's our anniversary. But, it was a big one this year, and excited for many more. Jeff, what's your final
That
thought?
was super convincing.
Just because my tone sounds unconvincing, and I'm generally sarcastic, I was very, I meant
I know.
that.
We know.
Yeah.
We absolutely know that. So first of all, I want to correct myself. I said 4 billion pounds of copper and nickel in that mine. It's actually 4 billion tons. So it's even more. Huge payload up there. I am very excited. As you guys know, we are starting our kitchen remodel on a couple days. But what's even better is I got some great news yesterday. And just to kind of maybe offer some thoughts on the whole supply chain thing, our appliances are actually going to be ready.
Really?
When we need them, like in the timeline for the
That's
kitchen.
awesome.
So
I'm
I was
happy for you.
anticipating I was anticipating this being like another 6 months and trying to plug the old stuff in, but they're going to be there. So hey, supply chain's getting better.
It's getting better.
You know?
Yeah.
We only ordered these like 6 months ago. So we're almost there.
That's a dream.
Yeah, I know. I know. So very fortunate there. So we also had trivia last week, and the question was, which organization's management team handled their situation the worst? And these were all stories we covered in the podcast, whether it was 3M, the city of San Francisco, Gestamp, the company that fired somebody for talking about their emergency appendectomy through Facebook Messenger, British Volt, the British EV battery maker, or BMW with the whole autonomous vehicle testing. So we polled our readership, and it was actually a dead tie
Really?
for the most popular answers. Which two do you think it was?
3M has to be one of them.
3M and Gestamp is my guess.
Yeah.
The city of San Francisco
the
and
trash
Gestamp
can.
tied right down the middle. So for those who had those answers, you'll be getting a ball cap and t-shirt. Also, wanted to take a minute to offer some feedback from a couple people who did respond. This one coming from Paul Hunt. He is talking about the Gestamp situation. He said, in his opinion, the worst part, they, meaning the company, Gestamp, was the worst part of it because it impacts the employee personality as though they didn't notify the supervisor. So if anyone is reprimanded, it should be the supervisor for not supporting company policy. So it's kind of a different take than what we had thought about. He's saying it wasn't necessarily the employee's fault, but the supervisor for not going through the right channel. So kind of an interesting take there.
Yeah.
Appreciate Paul and his thoughts. Also heard from Charlie Myers in talking about San Francisco. He said, and I love this guy, a classic example of why too many cooks spoil the broth. If this group of civic leaders can't make a decision on a trash can, we're all doomed. A waste of time, money, and resources that could have been avoided if only someone had the brains to just make a decision. Charlie, thank you for echoing my thoughts exactly. And to everybody who participated in the poll and left some thoughts on that one.
Man, and for using too many cooks spoil the broth.
Absolutely.
I'm going to work that in all weekend. Honey, I feel like we're going to spoil the broth here. One of us has got to leave. And then I'll be
Then
struck.
you'll go. So, following up on that theme this week, we're going to go with which of the following represents the most significant safety concern. Again, we talked about all this stuff in the podcast. We'll start with SL Alabama's child labor law violations, Morton Grove Pharmaceutical's continued drug contamination issues, a 165-pound Zephyr drone falling from the sky at 4,500 feet per minute,
No big deal.
a father using his son to validate Tesla's full-service driving system, or used vehicle buyers rushing to their dealership for the final Ford EcoSport. Which one represents the biggest safety
Slow
issue?
down, everyone. It's not safe.
Right, not everyone at once.
They're going to fly through these things. All right, so again, which one was the biggest safety concern? SL Alabama, Morton Grove Pharma, the Zone Druffer falling from the sky, a father using his son to validate Tesla's full-service driving, or people flocking to their dealership for the Ford EcoSport. So
Gotta
let
be
me know,
safe when you're
and
flocking.
we'll see what we got for next week.
See, I think it's a no-brainer, but that's what I thought about last week, and I didn't even tie for first.
Gestamp got a lot more play than I thought it would.
Yeah.
And I think the 3M thing would have played heavier, but it's been an ongoing story.
Yeah, it's been in the news. Well, excited to see what the listeners think.
Yeah.
You know, always good to get feedback. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. Finally, if you want to reach the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily and weekly newsletters and make sure you get the podcast delivered to your inbox first. All right, for Jeff and Anna, I'm I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we'll see you next week.